Hey, this week we are getting epiphanies that are more personal in nature. So in the season of Epiphany, it's all about the manifestation of God, the showing of God's power, the demonstrating of what the divine is doing in the world. And what we get this week is personal epiphanies of God. So we're going to have something from Isaiah chapter 6. We're going to have the 138th Psalm. We are going to have a word from Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. And then we're going to have a story from the Gospel of Luke, which has basically an epiphany that Peter has. And I don't have my printout of the text, so I'm leafing through my Bible, and as I'm doing that, I'm seeing that I'm going to I'm going to have to remind myself of what exactly are the verses. Okay, so let's start with let's Isaiah chapter 6. Now, we hear this passage. This is Isaiah chapter 6, verses 1 through, we'll do the whole chapter. But the ministry of Isaiah is set in the time of, remember, Hezekiah, the end of King Uzziah. Let's just get into it because he actually mentions this in this first verse. Chapter 6, verse 1 of Isaiah. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lofty, and the hem of his robe filled the temple. Using very anthropomorphic language, does he, when he says he sees the Lord sitting, does he see a face? Does he see, gender? Does he see, what does he see exactly? We're given, anytime we have poetic language such as this, we have to consider that he's just reaching for things that he can see. It's like, kind of like a dream, kind of like a vision, kind of like you can't see clearly, but it looks kind of like this. This is the way I see this. Because as we know, God doesn't wear a robe. God doesn't wear it. God doesn't have a body, so why would God need a robe? Exactly. It's a way of expressing something that cannot be described, basically. Words fail so often when we're talking about God, right? Seraphs were in attendance above him. We've seen the seraphs. The plural for seraph in Hebrew is seraphim, and so this is what we might be more used to hearing seraphim, because that's the plural ending, masculine plural ending, seraphim. So sometimes we get that in the older versions. Here we get seraphs, the English plural. Seraphs were in attendance above him. And seraphs were like these kind of like snakes with wings, kind of like cobras with wings. We see them in Egyptian art as well. Anyway, each had 6 wings. With 2, they covered their faces. Okay, why? Why would they cover their faces? Because the thought was you can't actually see God without dying. Okay, so you gotta do that, otherwise you're going to die. With 2, they covered their feet. Feet is a euphemism for the genitals, okay? It's a part of the culture that believe that that's your shame, and so keeping that covered, especially in the presence of God, very important, right? And with 2, they flew, okay? So the 6 wings, you don't need to go all symbolic about the number 6. It's just simply they were flying, but they had to cover their eyes and they had to cover their genitals, heads and feet, eyes and feet. And so there's this picture of the heavenly council, the heavenly throne, that there are these beings that attend to God, okay? There's also in the, well, we've heard of cherubs, cherubs. Okay, this isn't that, but it's that same thing of these are uncreated beings that tend to the royal court, okay, the royal majesty of God. Verse 3, and one called to another and said, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. So at this point, Isaiah is describing something he's seeing, that he's hearing. One called to another. It's like is it that they are announcing the entrance? There were specific times when in the temple there would be an entrance hymn, an entrance liturgy, if you will, is that what they're describing here? We don't know for sure. But as Isaiah sees this, he's getting a glimpse into a reality that, well, quite frankly, we can't identify with it very well, can we? Listen, verse 4, the pivots on the thresholds shook at the voices of those who called, and the house filled with smoke. Now the pivots on the thresholds, so the thresholds were the doors, and then the pivots were, the doors would swing on a pivot, right? That's the way that's what hinges are, if you think about it. They're pivots, okay? Well, these were big doors, and the pivots on the threshold shook at the voices of those who called. So it's like giving a sense of the majesty of the voices. Remember, this isn't the voice of God yet. This is the voice of the attending people, seraphs, the seraphim, and the house filled with smoke. Frequently in the temple, there were sacrifices made that of animals. Okay, anytime you got fire and you got animal fat and meat and whatever, what have you, guess what? Yeah, you're going to get smoke. Smoke was considered to be one of those things in nature that divinity manifested itself through. Okay, and if you think about it, it just makes sense because of the fact that we really can't see it clearly anyway. We can't see through it clearly, so there better be smoke. Because otherwise, if we could actually see God face to face, we would die, according to the thinking of the Old Testament, Hebrew Bible. Verse 5, and I said, okay, so this is a point at which he's reacting to what he's seeing. Woe is me. It's like, he has this sense of unworthiness. We're not worthy. That's kind of the same thing as the woe is me, okay? I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. The feeling of our inadequacy in front of God, this is an appropriate reaction. It's an honest reaction. It's one that bespeaks our createdness. It bespeaks the fact that it's not so much that we're always doing things wrong, but our custom is that we always do things wrong. There's nothing, our sin isn't about specific acts here and there. It just has to do with an overall way of being, okay? A man of unclean lips, which means to say, it's like, hey, I don't know, I can't have. He's hearing all of this stuff being said, amongst these attendants to divinity, and it's like, how my voice is I can't compete with that. Okay, it's kind of what he's saying. And I live among a people of unclean lips. It's like, yeah, this is the water I swim in. Okay, I know who I am, and I know that I'm not worthy of all this. Yet my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Okay, he's convinced that that's what he's seeing. He doesn't describe it other than, just the hem of the robe filled the temple. It's like, okay, this and the smoke. So what he actually saw, we don't know what he saw, but yet his reality is that he's having this epiphany, okay? He's having a revelation, a manifestation of God. Then one of the seraphs flew to me, holding a live coal that had been taken from the altar with a pair of tongs. So remember, that's how they had that fire, the fire for the sacrifices. And if you can imagine one of these glowing, you've seen it in a barbecue pit, right? Those glowing orange coals, right? But taken from the altar with a pair of tongs. The seraph touched my mouth with it and said, now that this has touched your lips, it going to burn, your guilt has departed and your sin is blotted out. Symbolic, yes, because of the fact that this is an experience of his being called to ministry, his being called to prophecy. And so it's like, okay, well, this is your concern. This was a typical response, okay? A typical response in these call narratives. We saw this with Jeremiah last week. The typical response is that how can I do this? This is way over my head, okay? And so we have this action, this divine action that then satisfies that feeling so that he can go forward with ministry. Now that this has touched your lips, your guilt has departed and your sin is blotted out. It's just simply a matter of the fact that, okay, yes, no, you're not worthy. And, but you know what? You're going to be my spokesperson. We encountered this with the Jeremiah story from last week. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, now he hears the voice of the Lord. Right? Yeah, because we're not being told that the voice of the Lord came up until now. Now he hears the voice of the Lord. Whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Okay? He's not talking to anybody in particular. The voice of the Lord is merely exclaiming to those in attendance, the seraphs, us, the royal council, okay? Whom shall I send? Who will go for us? And I said, can you imagine? It's like the feeling of like, I'm gonna step out. Here am I, send me. Okay. The seraph had already prepared him so he could actually feel as though he could adequately be a prophet. And he said, verse 9, go and say to this people. So immediately the Lord gives him, okay, this is your script. Keep listening, but do not comprehend. Keep looking, but do not understand. What? Yeah. Isaiah's ministry is going to be one of delivering a message to people that they don't want, they're not ready for, they're not going to accept, but yet it's necessary that the word get put out there. That's the nature of his ministry. Not a great thing to like say, oh, that's a great ministry. I'd love that. Well, that's not the way that works. Sometimes we're given words that are going to piss people off. And that's the reason why when we do feel pissed off in words that come to us from, authority, maybe they're supposed to. Maybe it's supposed to put us into a realm of thought, okay? Make the mind, get this, verse 10, make the mind of this people dull and stop their ears and shut their eyes. This is the nature of his message. It's going to be such that people are going to say, no, I don't want to listen, I don't want to hear, okay? So that they may not look with their eyes and listen with their ears and comprehend with their minds and turn and be healed. Isaiah's ministry isn't going to be a whole lot of, oh, you're going to see people really respond to this. No. That's a part of what it means to be called. The message isn't always something that you're going to hear or see the kind of response that you want to see. Verse 11, then I said, this is Isaiah, how long, O Lord? And he said, until cities lie waste without inhabitant and houses without people, and the land is utterly desolate, until the Lord sends everyone far away, and vast is the emptiness in the midst of the land. He's describing the reality that Judah will not escape judgment. Judah's judgment is sealed. There will be exile. There will be attack come from without. Even if a 10th part remain in it, it will be burned again. It's like whatever. Don't even talk about everything that you see, all the good that we've gotten here so far. Guess what? It's going away. This is what Isaiah is equipped with, right? Like a terebinth or an oak whose stump remains standing when it is felled, the holy seed is its stump. Whew. So everything's going to get chopped down. The royal line is going to end. And when it says the holy seed is its stump. You're not going to see anything, okay? The holy seed means that it's going to be something buried. It's going to be something in the ground. It's going to be something that can't be burned, okay? The holy seed is its stump. The holy seed, the promise of God is going to remain, but it's not going to be visible. It's going to be something that is obfuscated, and it's not going to be something that's obvious. And it's going to things are going to feel bad for a while, is what Isaiah is being told that his message is going to entail. So this is Isaiah's Epiphany. This is a popular text that is used with ordinations. In fact, I had it read at my ordination. And it's a personal epiphany of mission, of calling, and it's not all callings are glorious and like, wow, this is great. This has to do with giving, being a messenger of a message that's not going to be popular, but very necessary. Very necessary. You got to get it out there. There are some words that just have to be said, okay? And that's what this prophet is getting. All right, we're moving on. Psalm 138 is the psalm. I give you thanks, O Lord, with my whole heart. I'm reading this from the New Revised Standard because I didn't grab my Book of Common Prayer with me today. I give you thanks, O Lord, with my whole heart. Before the gods I sing your praise. I bow down toward your holy temple and give thanks to your name for your steadfast love and your faithfulness. For you have exalted your name and your word above everything. This is a hymn of thanksgiving. The little pretext thing says of David. We don't know if that means that it's saying David wrote it or that it was in honor of David, but it's a hymn of thanksgiving, and we can identify with it, I believe, in that we frequently in our thankfulness to God about what we've received, what we have, whether good or ill, we recognize it from the Lord. This is an epiphany, if you will, our thanksgiving. This is our way of making real our receiving of those blessings. Verse 3, on the day I called, you answered me. You increased my strength of soul. All the kings of the earth shall praise you, O Lord, for they have heard the words of your mouth. They shall sing of the ways of the Lord, for great is the glory of the Lord. For though the Lord is high, he regards the lowly, but the haughty he perceives from far away. So frequently in Thanksgiving, we want to really, how do we make it even bigger? And we say, well, this isn't just my experience. Everybody's going to hear this. Yeah. Though I walk in the midst of trouble, you preserve me against the wrath of my enemies. You stretch out your hand, and your right hand delivers me. Again, personal experience of epiphany, of manifestation, of divine power. Sometimes it comes just in our own personal experiences and in that we feel protected and safe. The Lord will fulfill his purpose for me. Your steadfast love, that's a good word. That's that Hebrew word chesed. It means solidarity, okay? It gets translated a lot of different ways. That's one of them. Your steadfast love, O Lord, endures forever. That's what it is, because your chesed, that's what it is. It is forever. Solidarity, that's like solid like a rock, that kind of a thing. Do not forsake the work of your hands. Frequently in the Psalms, there's this temptation to give the Lord a little instruction. Okay, I'm so thankful that I've had your presence with me. Don't you dare leave. Okay, this is a very human expression. All right, we're going to go to 1 Corinthians chapter 15. We've been in 1 Corinthians. Last week we did the love chapter, chapter 13. This week it's the chapter 15, where Paul talks about his receiving of the revelation of the resurrected Christ. Now I would remind you, brothers and sisters, of the good news that I proclaimed to you, which you in turn received, in which you also stand, through which also you are being saved, if you hold firmly to the message that I proclaimed to you, unless you have come to believe in vain. Okay, so he's reminding them of the confession of faith. Verse 3, for I handed on to you as of first importance what I in turn had received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he was raised on the third day in accordance with the Scriptures, and that he appeared to Cephas, then to the 12. Then he appeared to more than 500 brothers and sisters at one time, most of whom are still alive, though some have died. Then he appeared to James, then to all the apostles. Last of all, as to one untimely born, he appeared also to me. Remember, what's the theme? Epiphany, okay? Again, this is an example of Paul recalling an epiphany of the divine, a manifestation, a realization of the divine. And he puts himself of lower value due to the fact that he wasn't, Paul, it seems as though it's like he would, I think sometimes he pined for the thought, wouldn't it have been great to have been one of the original 12? But that's why he calls himself as to one untimely born, sometimes referred, that the word is also miscarriage or abortion, if you will. One born at the wrong time as to not even survive, because that's basically a miscarriage or an abortion is. But he's like, this is his way of it's a self put down. Yeah, Paul, as often as he puffs himself up, he also puts himself down. For I am the least of the apostles, unfit to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God. But by the grace of God, I am what I am, and his grace toward me has not been in vain. So Paul's description of his epiphany, of his realization of the truth of the resurrection, for him, he could say that, he wasn't worthy, but you know what? It hasn't been in vain. It hasn't been for nothing. And this is one of the things that drove him, okay? On the contrary, I worked harder than any of them. And I think he's referring to the originals, the original apostles, because there did come a time when they started to hunker down in their sectarianism and their feeling of like, well, the church is supposed to be for the Jews. And Paul's like, no, I go to the Gentiles. So he felt like it was necessary for him to take the gospel out, because he saw where the gospel was going. He saw the bigger picture. And it appears as though the original apostles that stayed in Jerusalem were a little bit more wanting to stay secluded and not putting them out there. I worked harder than any, though it was not I, but the grace of God that is with me. See, so even though Paul's like saying, yeah, I worked harder than them, but with me is God's grace. So this is a good practice for any time we find ourselves getting a little puffy. It's like, oh, but yet it's not I, it's the grace of God. And that you got to be able to recognize, yeah, I know I'm working hard, but you know what? It's all because God's doing that through me. That's what any preacher's got to say, and that's what I like to say. Although I don't always take the opportunity to do that, but especially if I get compliments or whatever on a sermon or a teaching or whatever, it's like, well, I'm glad that's for you. I'm glad that's for you, that you got that. But you want to get that impact that's God. That's God doing that. That's the Holy Spirit at work, and I'm thankful for that. Although I don't always voice that. But it's the grace of God that is within me that does that. Whether then it was I or they, so we proclaim, and so you have come to believe. So he's saying to the church in Corinth that so whether or not it's the fact that you believe is all that really matters. He's he conveyed it the first, he talked about the resurrection. By the way, this passage is also used during Eastertide in our, I think, year A or something like that. But during Eastertide, and if you can, it's a very Eastertide type of a text, right? Because it talks about the resurrection and all of that. Paul is describing it as an epiphany because of the fact that it comes through witness, okay? Witness, witness, witness. There is so much of what happens in Christendom that it gets, people saw and then they said. They see and they say. See and say. So what you witness, you talk about. This is a paradigm for the reality of church growth, okay? That's what the E word is all about, right? Evangelism. That's what you experience. This is what you talk about. What do you talk about? This is what you want to talk about. You want to talk about the difference that it makes for you to have the Lord in your life, to be a disciple of Jesus. What difference does that make for you? This is a viable thing to put in our conversations. Okay, so Paul's epiphany, Paul's realization, it came and it's something that's resulted in the vast expansion of the church. All right, we're going to go now to our gospel passage in Luke chapter 5, verses 1 through 11. And what we get here is the calling of the disciples. Each of the Gospels, talks of the disciples. This story is odd in that it really kind of looks like that thing that we have at the very last chapter of the Gospel of John, where Jesus is there on the beach and tells them to let it on their nets, and they get this tremendous catch of fish. Well, they get a tremendous catch of fish here. But it happens at the beginning of their ministry. Verse 1. Once while Jesus was standing beside the lake of Gennesaret, and the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he saw two boats there at the shore of the lake. The fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. So these were those boats that they use for the fishing, and they are now currently unoccupied. Verse 3, he got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little way. Now, to ask him to put it out a little way from the shore. Now, earlier in Luke's gospel, we had Peter mentioned in that Jesus did a healing, I believe it was, of Peter's mother-in-law. Remember that? Well, we don't get anything about Peter in that story, but here we get more of Peter. So we know that there's some sort of a connection, okay? Some sort of a knowing that Peter at least knows who Jesus is, right? And is toying, or some sort of a devotee, anyway. Then he sat down in the boat and taught the crowds from the boat, okay? By the way, sitting down is what you do when you take the position of a teacher. That's right. When Jesus went to the synagogue that one time, remember when he read the scroll, he stood up to read the scroll, and then he sat down. Now, sitting down doesn't mean he was done. It just meant that that's when his time he took the position of the teacher, okay? Sitting down is what you do when you take the position of a teacher. When he finished speaking, he said to Simon, put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch. Now, notice we don't get any indication of what Jesus talked about. Isn't that curious? It's like, I wonder what he said. But it said that the people who were pressing in on him were wanting to hear the word of God. So apparently whatever it was he said was considered to be the word of God. Yeah. That's fascinating, though, to think, what did Jesus say in that sermon on the boat? That might be a nice little sermon. What did Jesus say in that sermon on the boat? What could he have said? That'd be a nice little imaginative thing to work on. Verse 5, Simon answered, Master, we have worked all night long, but have caught nothing. Remember, what did Jesus just get done saying? Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch. Well, maybe he talked about something with regard to, circumstances of like, okay, it might not look like a favorable time. You might not have the experience of having caught anything, but yet, you know what? You need to always allow for the possibility that could be transformed. There we go. We're getting something there. Master, we have worked all night long, but have caught nothing. Yet if you say so, I will let down the nets. To let down the nets means you're ready to bring in a catch, right? When they had done this, they caught so many fish that their nets were beginning to break. A good way of describing, just so much that it's like, oh my goodness, are the nets gonna hold? Yeah. So they signaled their partners in the other boats to come and to help them. And they came and filled both boats so that they began to sink. All of this hyperbole, I love it, love it. Oh yes, the nets were breaking, and when they finally got it into the boat, then it was like, the boats are gonna sink. Hyperbole is wonderful. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, remember the reaction of Isaiah? What was Isaiah's reaction in the presence of the holy, right? Of like, oh, woe is me, I'm a man of unclean lips, and I'm among a people of unclean lips. Here's Peter's reaction. Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man. Basically, isn't this not similar to what Isaiah said in his experience, right? For he and all who were with him were amazed at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. This extraordinary catch is for Jesus a way of, it's an epiphany for Peter, in that Jesus is opening up for him possibilities that Peter never dreamed is even possible. The possibilities of what you have with me are going to blow your mind. They're going to rock your world, okay? They're going to sink your boat and rip your nets. They're going to rock your world. They're going to blow your mind, okay? And then we have this list of the other people who were there. Notice we don't see Simon Peter's brother Andrew there. But yet we know in other contexts that he is. Then Jesus said to Simon, do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching people. Yeah, this is one of those unfortunate things where it's like, I love the play on words when it's saying, well, from now on, you'll be fishing for men. Because, you have the word fisherman and fishing for men, that play on words, and we lose that when we say, now you will be catching people. And it's like, oh, that kind of doesn't feel good. That's not as poetic. That's not as fun. Fishing for men, I love that. I love that better. But this is the way we get it translated because we want to be inclusive. And, that's a worthy goal. It's a worthy goal. But to be catching people, the idea is that you don't know it. You may have given up on the fact that people are looking for something new, that people are looking for transformation. You may have given up on that, Peter. But you know what? I'm here to tell you, we're not giving up on that, okay? There's a lot more out there. There's a lot more out there just like this. And that's what I have in store for you. When they had brought their boats to shore, they left everything and followed him. So apparently they had quite a business going of being fishermen. And to say that they left everything, I don't know. Does that mean that they totally just parked the boats? Okay, we're putting them in dry dock, not putting the boats out there any longer, gonna just follow Jesus. Is that possible that they did that? And then is it possible that, like in the Gospel of John, when after the resurrection, they end up on the beach and Jesus is unrecognized and they're out fishing and they've gone back to their business of fishing after Jesus, after his earthly ministry was over? Very possible that's the case. But in the season of Epiphany, we see in Peter an example of being open to an epiphany of God, a manifestation of God, like his mind had already been made up. Peter was like, yeah, sort of, we've been fishing all night. There's nothing there. Let down the nets anyway. The idea of being open to a possibility that is unforeseen, this is what the gospel is about. The gospel is about bringing hope in situations where the hope doesn't exist, and bringing possibility to situations where possibility doesn't exist. Like anytime we get down and like, oh, it's so bad, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about the pandemic or we're talking about, I don't know, just circumstances with our bank account or our job or whatever. It's like, you know what? There's something great that's on the precipice. This is just a circumstance. It's not the reality of we can actually create an experience whereby we're open to a reality that's much bigger, much more blessed, much more divine oriented, if you will. These are our texts for this Sunday in Epiphany.